it up.
Hey everyone, what's going on? Mark here from TST Industries, back in the garage with another installation video. Today we are going to be working on this brand new 2022 Yamaha R7, and I will be showing you how to install our TST exclusive Halo-GTR front turn signals. These signals, as shown in this video, are comprised of our GTR front flush mounts, which are a plug and play, super bright amber LED front turn signal. But in this setup, they will also include the Halo running light modules we offer in various colors. These Halo running lights are an accent color designed to be illuminated when the bike is on, and once you signal, those will turn off and the signals will turn on. If you decided to purchase this entire setup, or if you only wanted to purchase the GTR front flush mounts, you can do that. And at a later time or any time, you can purchase the Halo running light modules separately. If you already have them, want to change the color, or if you only have the GTR signals and want to add in a running light, you can do so at any given time. Those are available on our website. So be sure to check that out. We'll talk about it later on in this video. We'll drop the link in the description. Be sure to read through everything carefully. Make sure you understand what you're purchasing. Now, this installation process is fairly straightforward, but it is a little time consuming. So we want to take our time. We're going to show you the proper way of deconstructing this side fairing and getting access to the front turn signals to replace them. And without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. You won't need any specialty tools, a Phillips head screwdriver, a small pick or a flathead, and then a 4mm hex key is all that's needed. So let's go ahead and jump right in and start tearing this bike apart. So to begin this installation process, you do need to take all the fairings off. We are going to start with this upper side cover, if you will. There's 3 push pins, one here, one on the inner portion, one on this front face, and then we have a 4mm hex screw there. So we're gonna go ahead and remove those. I'm going to take my small tool, whether it be a pick or a flathead screwdriver, whatever you have access to, gently apply pressure to those push pin rivets, and then you can pop them out. I'll repeat that step 3 times over, making sure that all of these are removed. And lastly, let's take our 4mm hex key and undo this bolt. There are plastic washers on all of the stainless hardware, so keep that in mind. You want to keep those on the bolt heads or the screw heads to ensure when you reinstall them, you don't scratch up your fairings or mark them up. Now, to remove this fairing, there's a bunch of slides. You're going to simply slide it forward and then lift up, giving you access to everything underneath. Now that that's taken off, what I like to do is push this to the side along with all the appropriate hardware. So for the reinstallation process, I know exactly what goes where. Now with that complete, I do need to take off this rear facing body panel. These are 2 4mm hex bolts again. So we're gonna take this off. We have one here on the more forward face, and then we have the exposed one on the rear. With those bolts removed, you're gonna wanna apply a little bit of force and pull back. The only thing holding it in at this point is this friction fastener post that slides into that receiving feature. We can now go ahead and take our pick tool or the small flathead, and there's actually a single push pin rivet on this lower fin feature. And you're not going to want to remove the fin, but you do want to remove that push rivet. So we're going to go ahead and apply pressure. That sound means it freed up, and then you can use your hands and simply remove it. This push pin rivet, we will want to push to the side. Being that we're not removing that piece, I don't want to lose it on our workbench, so I'm going to keep that in front of the bike so I know where its placement is. With that removed, we can now focus on these 3 Phillips head fasteners. These fasteners are a little tricky to work on. You will need a small Phillips head screwdriver. You may need to turn your wheel, and even more so, if you aren't applying enough pressure or if you're applying too much pressure, the entire system might spin and you won't be able to remove these. So they're a little tricky to work on, but what you need to do is screw off the center portion just ever so slightly so you get a little lip. I don't know if you can see that on camera. And once you have enough of a lip protruding, you can actually take your small flathead or your small tool and pull it out even more. And then you should be able to just wiggle this loose, breaking it free. So again, I'll show that on camera. Ideally, I don't know if you could see this, but you want to get about that much of the head shown. So the way this system works is it sits like that, and if you apply too much pressure, the whole system could spin. If you don't apply enough, nothing will spin. You want to apply just enough to where it begins to back out for you to get your tool underneath there. And once it's backed out, you can pull it and then actually remove it. So we'll repeat that 3 times over. That was the center one. We have a lower one, and then we have an upper one that'll free this outer fairing from the inner fairing, and then we can actually focus on removing this piece. Might want to wiggle them loose just a little bit. Sometimes using your tool to remove them is also pretty easy and helpful. And with those removed, I'm going to also leave these in front of the motorcycle. I'm not going to put them on our workbench because this fairing is not being removed. Now we can actually focus on removing this outer side fairing. And to do that, you want to remove 2 fasteners and then a clip holding in the electrical connector for the turn signals. So we have a small push pin up here. This is holding in the front headlight shroud to the side fairing. Again, a little bit of pressure and then remove it. And then on the back, we have a 4mm stainless steel bolt. Go ahead and remove that. And as you can see, that actually freed up the fairing quite a bit, right? And at this point, if you felt comfortable, technically you could probably install the signals this way. We are not going to do that. And lastly, you want to go ahead and remove this security clip. This is the fastener holding in the turn signal plug to the fairing so the wires aren't drooping. In order to remove this or uninstall it, you're going to apply a little bit of pressure to the sides, either by hand or with the tool. Press down, you can see it actually just released it from there. And at this point, you now have access to this gray and black connector set. This is the connector holding in the turn signal plug. So you're going to want to apply a little bit of pressure to the gray side, lift, press down and pull, and it actually removes it from its housing. And now we can finally remove this side fairing. Lastly, we want to go ahead and remove these bottom 3 bolts that hold the lower fairing to this upper side fairing. This will allow us to actually wiggle this free and finesse it off of the bike. So let's go ahead and remove those now. Again, all of these stainless steel bolts do have plastic washers on them to protect your paint. So make sure as you remove the bolts or the screws that the washers go with them. Now it's important to note this part of the installation or the removal process of this fairing can be a little unforgiving. It can feel very wrong. And I know working on a brand new bike, it can get a little stressful. If you do not feel comfortable doing this, again, please seek the help of a certified professional. Take it to a shop or a dealership. But this fairing is now free. And what you'll see is the back is free. There's a few tabs here that are locking these 2 pieces together. And then there's a friction fastener facing the side and the front of the bike towards the headlight. So we need to be very careful about how we remove this. Make sure we don't break any tabs. I'm going to get on the lower plane, that way you guys can see. This this rear facing panel just pops right off, and so does this front one. You want to apply a little bit of pressure once you release those 2, about 2 inches to 3 inches in, and then pull forward on the bottom, releasing it from the center portion. And as I remove this, you'll see just what I'm talking about. There's one metal clip here, and then there's some slides here and tabs that these fairings mate into each other with. So it's a little bit of finesse. Do it with intention, do it with purpose, but again, if you don't feel safe doing it, take it to a shop. No harm, no foul. Now we can go ahead and remove the front portion of this side fairing. And again, you're gonna pull towards yourself initially, towards the side of the bike. And now with that tab free, you're gonna push forward. And as I turn this over for you to see, you can actually see here, this is the side fastener, this is a friction fastener, and so is this one here. And these actually mate into these surfaces, locking them in place, securing the fairing down. So again, just be careful, be purposeful, and if you don't feel safe, take it to a shop. Now with this fairing off, we can put it on our work surface, begin the disassembly procedure of this OEM signal and get our new TST Halo-GTR signal installed. So with the fairing off, I put it on our work surface. I did put a microfiber towel down, just preference. I don't want to have any micro scratches on this brand new fairing. So to begin, you do want your tool, whether it be a small pick like this or a flathead screwdriver, whatever the case is. Start off by unrouting the cables within these clips. As you can see, you can kind of just lift up on the clips and pull the wires out, freeing them from those locking tabs. At this point, we do need to actually remove the signal from the fairing. And you can see, if you take a look at the backside, there's actually no screws or anything holding it in place. It's just plastic tabs on a metal clip here. So I can use my tool and gently pry each metal tab ear out of the rubber boot it's in. And once that's done, you can actually see that that metal clip, the metal security clip, is actually off of the backing now. If I flip the fairing over to the other side, in theory at this point I should be able to simply apply gentle pressure and it comes right out, freeing the signal from the fairing. You can snake the metal bracket through along with the rest of the wire and the connector, and voila, your OEM signal's gone. We can now go ahead and install our TST Halo-GTR signal. Now, for this installation process, let me lay this down temporarily. For this installation process, it is important to note that these signals are side specific. On the top of each signal, for this bike, it says TST Industries on top. This one would be for the right side fairing, as if you face it this way, TST is upside down and the signal will not fit into the well. So keep that in mind as you're installing these. Let me grab the correct one, and with this kit, you will receive a rubber O-ring. This is optional. I want to highlight that this is optional. This is a piece we're including because we noticed that if you install it without the O-ring, the signal will sit more flush in the fairing, and some people want that look. I think it looks pretty slick from the front. It's really, really smooth, really flush against the fairings. There's no issues there. But some people may want it to stick out a little bit more. We've received some comments over the year, some suggestions, and we love that. We love the feedback. We love the reviews that we get from customers. That's why we have the reviews on our website. And this just goes to show that we do take action on that. So for this bike in particular, we decided to include some rubber O-rings. And what that does is, if you take the O-ring and snake it through the wire harness so that it sits on the signal body, you can then go ahead and install the signal with the O-ring mating against the surface of the signal well, and you will actually see that the signal sticks out further than it did before. So if you want a more flush look, a more recessed look, you can go without the O-ring. And if you want it to sit a little bit more out, still flush, but a little bit more out, then use the O-ring. The choice is yours. There is no right or wrong way to do this. Me personally, I will use the O-ring because I like the way it looks. I'm gonna go ahead and just make sure that this is sat nice and flush on the signal body. And then I will take this, we're gonna flip it to the other side. Let me make sure my towel is here. Now that it's on the other side, I can install our Halo running light modules. And I will show you how to do this. The first step is you wanna take the wire on the Halo running light module and loop it through the notch in the module. So it sits like this. By default, it will be like this. You simply just want to route it through so it sits on the outside. This inner portion where the connectors are and the circuit board is will actually sit against the signal. So at this point, I can go ahead and copy this step. So let me actually show you off of the fairing so you can get a accurate visualization here. We're going to route the signal through, or route the cable through the running light module. And then we will also route the cables from the signal body. So you will have two connectors coming through the white slotted portion on the running light module, Once that happens and you have it sat into the signal body, you can press down and it is now locked in place. I did mention this is removable, right? If at any point you want to remove it, swap the colors out, it's literally that simple. So again, route the wires through, superimpose it so that the notches are inside the signal body, press down, and that's complete. You can now then go ahead, take the connection, and hear an audible click. That means that these are locked together and you're all good to go. You can actually proceed with the installation on this side. So that may be easier for some of you. If you want to do it on the bike, it's just as easy. Choice is yours. It's the beauty of our products. At the end of the day, the choice is yours. So now that that's locked in there, I'm going to connect this piece. And the very last step to make sure this signal actually is secured to the bike, you want to take our ratcheting fasteners, and with the teeth down, facing downward, you will snake the wire and the connector through, and then you will apply pressure. You hear it grabbing, you hear the teeth grabbing on the notches on our signals. That means that they are engaging. And you can see now the signal is installed, nice and flush. If there's a small gap, that's perfectly fine. It is to be expected if you use the O-ring because it's sitting more protruding from the fairing a little bit more than without the O-ring. So nothing to be alarmed there. There is no chance of water getting inside this unit. This should be completely sealed and you'll be all good to go. At this point, we can begin the reinstallation process of this fairing on the bike. Before we finalize that, I will go ahead and actually test it on the bike, make sure this signal is functional, and then we can finalize the reinstallation process. So now we're gonna take our connector from the turn signal that we've just installed and not fully connect it. You can if you want to, but I'm just going to make sure it makes full contact. We're gonna turn our bike on and voila, we can actually see that the running light, the accent light did turn on. This is the clear variant on this blue fairinged bike. Obviously on the black version of this bike, it'll be even brighter. When we go ahead and test the signal, make sure that works. And as you can see, the running light turns off, the signal is activated. When the signal is deactivated, the running light comes back on. I'm gonna go ahead and power this down. At this point, we could reinstall the entire fairing, but before I do that, I'm gonna disconnect this signal and actually show you, we do wanna go ahead and make sure that we route these wires correctly. We have these routing clips, might as well use them. And you can simply, one at a time, route the wires through. Or if it works better for you, open the clip up gently and then route both wires at once. Now that that is complete, I'm going to reinstall the fairing, and then lastly, before we button everything up, I will connect this. So to begin, we want to start on the front of the bike. I find it easiest because you do have these friction fasteners. That helps keep the fairing in place and ensuring that all the other holes should line up. So we'll start with the very front point. That is this protruding friction fastener here. You're going to line that up below the eyebrow light on this bike. Push back, and then you're going to push forward. And now you know everything else, if installed correctly, should line up perfectly. We're going to go ahead and swap where these sit. And to secure this back fairing, so I can go ahead and make sure these sit properly, I'm actually going to reinstall the larger stainless bolt on the rear of this bike. And I'm not going to tighten it all the way, just give it a few threads by hand. That way I know nothing will move around. So now I can focus on this bottom panel. And again, have a little bit of patience with this. On the front lip, you have a post that needs to sit inside of a receiving portion of this fairing. Everything else is just slide clips and fasteners. You should hear an audible clip for every portion of this fairing. when it's installed properly. And you don't want to force it. So as you can see, I'm having a little bit of issues. I'll pull it off and actually start on the front. All right. With all the surfaces nice and flush, all the holes are aligning for the bolts, I can go ahead and one by one slowly turn these bolts in. Make sure you're not cross-threading. A little trick I like to use is go counterclockwise to make sure you're sitting in the accepting portion, and then slowly hand thread these with the tool. You don't want to bottom them out just yet, because you do want to make sure that you're not cross-threading. All right, those are all good. We have this bolt up here, so now we can go ahead and tighten them down, bottom out, and go another 1/8 of the way. If you go too far, it will jump threads, and then you'll feel it loosen up and then tighten up again. Tighten this upper rear bolt, give that a nice snug, and then you want to reinstall this push pin fastener. If you've never worked with these before, to remove them, you push down. Well, to reinstall them, you want to push the back side and have the push portion actually protruding from the top. You're gonna insert that on the upper portion of this fairing that mates with the headlight fairing, and then pop the top down so it sits flush. This fairing is reinstalled. Now we can go ahead and reinstall the push pin on the front. And lastly, we'll do the inner ones. I'll show you how those insert into the inner fairing, and then we will install this top fairing and repeat the process for the other side. So now you can go ahead and reinstall these front Phillips head plastic screws. These are a little bit interesting. As you saw when we were removing them, they can be a little finicky. In order to reinstall them, the best method that I find is to simply insert them into the hole, and instead of trying to screw them back in, just press them down. The hardest part is making sure that the holes are aligned, especially on a place like this where you can't really get a sense of depth or alignment because you're looking at the inner fairing. So you kind of just honestly want to fish around. I saw that that one went in no issues. So now I'm going to go ahead and press it in and hope that the rest are just as easy. Generally speaking, if you start with ends and work your way to the center, everything should align perfectly. So you can see that upper one went in. I just pressed it in, it's locked in place. So this center one should be perfectly aligned at this point, and it is. Voila, that is now complete. We can begin the reinstallation process of these two upper fairings, button this up, repeat this for the other side, and call it a day. So now starting on the rear upper cover, you can see here again, this is only a push pin friction fastener, but you do have this post here. So what I find easiest is to insert the post, and that pin should fall right in line. You can then take your tool and the bolts, insert them. Again, I like to go counterclockwise and then clockwise. Once you bottom out, go another 1/8 of a turn, good to go. We'll repeat the steps here. There we go. And now we'll put the upper portion of this fairing in. And to reinstall this, you can see the slide features here actually. And that's what the piece engages with. So you want to push it towards the front and then slide back, locking it in place. Insert all your push pins. Again, push them out. Voila, this installation is now complete. And with this all buttoned up, you can now go ahead and repeat every single step for the right side of the bike. In order to prevent this installation video from being an hour long, I'm not going to show that. However, every single step, down to every bolt, can be repeated for the right side of the bike. So go ahead and perform that at this time. And before you button everything up and go out for a ride, check your work. Make sure that your signals do turn on, the little accent light is nice and illuminated, and check your signal function, make sure they flash properly. As you can see, we're good on this side. So I'm gonna go out for a ride. So check these out and all the other products we have for the 2022 Yamaha R7. Be sure to stop by tstindustries.com. We also have parts for a ton of other bikes. So be sure to stop by, check us out. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already and turn that notification bell on. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them in the comment field below. And as always, stop by our social media pages. Give us a shout, say hello, give us a follow. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're here for you guys. This is Mark from TST Industries signing off. Catch you guys next time.
Start it up.